Hey everybody, welcome to That Expert Show. I'm Anna Canzano. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. I love starting the week with you this way. And today we have an amazing topic set up for you. I know I say that every time, but I really do like these topics because I pick them and these are things that I'm just personally interested in, and I think that many of you are as well. We are talking today about home improvement. This is like DIY stuff, not just home improvement, but specifically for me, I wanted to know about things that I can do around the house or that we can do around the house to maintain the life of our home. There's probably a myriad of things that we can do that are simple, that don't cost a lot of money, but can prolong the life and the quality of this investment that we have made. And I want to say that you can, think about this in terms of even if you don't own your own home or if you're in an apartment, I want to ask questions today that have to do with whatever your dwelling is, whatever things that you can do to make where you live just a little bit better. Our guest today will be the keynote speaker in just a couple of weeks at the Northeast Retail Lumber Association meeting in Boston. He is part of the design council for the luxury brand Baldwin Hardware, which incidentally chose him as one of the top 25 designers and architects in the U.S. He is host of a radio show and podcast called Around the House with Eric G. Joining us live right now via Skype is Eric Goranson. And Eric, you do go by Eric G because I guess people have a hard time saying Goranson or remembering that.
Yeah, it's kind of like Canzano. People can figure out a way to butcher an easy word.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, thanks so much for being with us. We have a huge list of questions to tackle with you today. People are really interested in this topic because I think, we all want to know from an expert like yourself, simple things we can do to make things better. You ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to ask you came from an expert show insider, so somebody who's been with the show for quite a long time, and her name's Erin. She wanted to know right off the bat, what are the top 3 things that you should bring in a professional for? Because everybody loves the idea of DIY and, going to home improvement or going to Home Depot or Lowe's and wandering around and trying to figure stuff out. But what, in your opinion, are 3 areas of the home where you really should just call in a professional?
Probably the top 3. First is going to be an electrician, unless you're super handy. It's just better to bring an expert in so you don't burn the house down or get yourself killed trying to play electrician. Now, the second one I'm going to say is going to be a roofer. Roofing repairs or putting a new roof on can be done as a DIY, but it's a tough, hard, nasty job. And then third, I'm going to say repairing your own heating and air conditioning stuff. That is, you got to have a lot of tools, and most people are not going to tool up just to do that repair at home.
Those are good points. Now, I want to clarify with you on the electrician front because I may or may not know someone in our household who is fond of just YouTubing electrical repairs, which makes me crazy. So at what level, if you're wanting to put a dimmer on a light switch, at what level are you calling in an electrician?
It's kind of whatever you're comfortable with, because there's a lot of people out there that have no problem, that have the skills to rewire a house. But if you're comfortable changing out a light switch, great. If you're comfortable, what happens when you get into a 2 or 3-way switch where there's 3, 4, 5 wires, depending on how many things you got going on? It can get significantly more difficult. So that answer is kind of based upon their skill level. If they're comfortable doing it, they know what they're doing, great. You can be careful and do it yourself. However, that level, if you get beyond it, that's when things go badly.
Gotcha. Okay. We have another question for you. It has to do with kitchen cabinets. Heather on Facebook wants to know, what is the most cost-effective way to replace kitchen cabinets?
When replacing kitchen cabinets, it's one of those things that bringing a designer in early so you can actually design it out and make it more useful. That's really what you want to start with, because if you just remove and replace what you have, many times it's, 15 to 60 years old. Kitchens have changed so much since then. All these new appliances and gadgets and things like that. Bring a designer in early, have that designer work with your contractor, and then figure out a really solid budget. Kitchens are one of the most expensive remodels in a home, so you've got to really spend some time and effort planning it out to get what you need, as well as make sure that it fits within the house and the budget for the house.
So for people who are a little more ambitious and want to do some portion of that themselves, can most people afford a designer? Because when I think of remodeling a kitchen, and maybe I'm one of those ambitious types where I might think of, wandering into one of those hardware stores and just looking at what they have and starting from there. Is hiring a designer budget reasonable for a lot of families?
Well, it actually will save you a ton of money, because what happens is as a DIY or a homeowner, you walk into a store and you're picking out tile. Well, you're kind of blind looking at 100,000 tile choices. And the problem is that you can mismatch things that maybe shouldn't be working together. Maybe you pick the wrong tile for the floor. Now that you get out of the shower, it's slippery. Or maybe you pick a tile for the shower that's not meant to go in a shower, so you end up having to do it again. Many times that designer is actually going to help you make the right choices, and it's going to save you on the contractor and save you on materials as well. Many times homeowners out doing their own design work and specifying and grabbing their own materials, that contractor is going to anticipate those mistakes, and they'll charge you a little bit more for it because there's nobody helping guide them through the process. So you're going to pay for it either way if you're working with a contractor on the project, or you're going to make mistakes that are going to kind of put you in there where you're going to have to redo things, and then that designer would have saved you money.
Interesting. Okay, that's a good point. Now, an addendum to the kitchen question then, or maybe a bathroom cabinet situation as well. When does it make more sense to just repaint or resurface, and what's the cost comparison there?
It's funny. When you take kitchen cabinets, you hear people talking about, maybe refacing cabinets, for instance. In most cases, that price to sit there and clean the cabinets up really well and, re-glue veneers over it, put doors on those cabinets, it's almost the same price as putting another new set of kitchen cabinets in. So refacing will cost you probably more if you're putting new countertops and then refinishing the fronts of those cabinets. Many times that's going to cost you more than actually just replacing them.
That
and
is
then the
shocking.
other problem, yeah, it's
Okay.
all in the labor, you can buy kitchen cabinets, but if you've got guys in there for 2 or 3 days having to reface all that, if you think of kitchen cabinets, about 75 to 80% of the expense of that cabinet is in that front inch and a half of the cabinet where the doors and drawers are. That's the expensive part. So when you're replacing and refinishing that, a new kitchen's probably going to be better, and then you can upgrade it as well. It's funny, they say the life of a kitchen is really only about 15 years before they consider it outdated, and that's what most insurance people will tell you.
Interesting. Okay, 15 years. I didn't know that. That's going to be a strong argument for people to make to their partners and say, hey, our kitchen needs some remodeling.
Everything's got a lifespan in your home. It's just depending on how long you're going to drag it out.
Yeah. There's another question. This one is from Nikki on Instagram, and this probably has to do with the kitchen as well. She wants to know about lighting, I guess across your home, but maybe in your major living spaces. She wants to know whether adding wattage, really adds something to the home. And also she mentioned an under cabinet lighting bar and what that does to the counter space, let's say in your kitchen.
See, lighting changes about every 6 months right now because technology for LEDs just keeps getting better and better and better. You used to have all those just ugly fluorescent bulbs that fit underneath your kitchen, and it made it feel like an office in there for under cabinet lighting. But these days, we're really getting into lighting design, and there's so many things you can do. A well-lit home will always look better than one that's not. And if you're using like old incandescent bulbs, or even worse, the compact fluorescent ones, those are horrible. With LED lights, you can save energy, be safer in the room that you're going to be in, whether it's a kitchen, bathroom, living, or whatever, and you're saving a ton of money on the energy side. So there's so many things you can do with LED lights. You can literally put them in under cabinet or inside a cabinet, and with a remote control, you can change them from white light to blue to red for the holidays or whatever you want to do.
Oh,
there's
cool.
endless opportunities with LED lights this
Yeah, I
time of year.
think I'm pretty old school on that because when I think LED, I think of a weird kind of dim glow, and you're saying that things have come a long way since that.
Well, if you think about it, like if you have a light fixture that's maybe your dining room light fixture that you had light bulbs in it, when you would turn that light down on the dimmer, it would get yellower as the color temperature changes. So when you brought the wattage down, they even make LED lights now that will do that as you turn it down, that color temperature will change. So it gets kind of that yellower and browner looking light. And so when you dim it, it makes it more, romantic dim that way. Where with a regular standard LED light that dims, it just changes the light output. So you don't get that color change, which kind of messes with people sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, working back to the concept of roof repair, which you mentioned earlier, good to hire a professional. Michelle on Facebook wants to know, valid question, why does a 30-year roof only seem to last for 20 years?
Well, the 30-year roof is a marketing ploy that they say, we're going to give you a warranty for 30 years. But because of how they do the warranty, at 1 year, you're going to get a new roof. As it goes, you get less and less and less, where at 30 years, you might get enough to buy yourself lunch. So that warranty is kind of a marketing thing. It's the warranty on it, but it's not a full lifetime of the roof type warranty. It's not like when you buy a car and it's under warranty, you take it in to get it fixed. Under roof warranties, you get less and less payment out of that warranty as it goes. So maybe at 15 years, you're going to get half of that warranty. By 30, you're not going to get any. And then most people don't maintain their roofs correctly anyway. So by doing that, you're going to get less and less life out of it just by chance.
So what are this may be an obvious answer, but what are the things that you can do to maintain your roof and extend the life of it?
Keep them clean. Don't pressure wash it unless you have to. But I would have a maintenance agreement with a good roofing company, maybe even the one that put it on to begin with, and have them go up, make sure and inspect it once or twice a year, and then clean it up. You can put on zinc strips up there, whatever. That moss and things like that really will take the life out of a roof, of just a regular normal composition roof, and then, which is your normal shingles that you see out there. But if you have somebody come up and inspect it and clean it, you're going to get a lot more life out of it. The quickest way to ruin a roof is to get somebody up there that doesn't know what they're doing with a pressure washer, and you can make that 50-year roof a 5-year roof if you're not careful.
Did you say once or twice a year? Like, that sounds like a lot to me, but I'm willing to explore that idea if it is extending the life of the roof.
Yeah, let's say you have a windstorm and maybe a couple shingles get flipped back. If they're up there once or twice a year, they can fix it, repair it. If there's any flashing issues, they can take care of that stuff. If they're up there looking at it, inspecting it, you can fix it quickly versus having, a big problem where now all of a sudden you've got a water drip coming in through your living room around your fireplace.
Some of those products that people buy here in the Pacific Northwest, moss and moisture on roofing is a big deal. So some of those products that people buy to spray on or put on to take away the moss, are those safe, or are those eating away at kind of the fiber of the composite?
No, those are pretty safe. Most brands are safe with that stuff. You can go up there. I've put like Moss Begone and different brands of stuff out there on my roof. It's worked really well because that moss, when it grows on there, it's just eating into it. And then when you go up there and pressure wash it or whatever, the roots of that moss take the surface with it. So you want to kill it that way with zinc or one of those other products like that to get rid of that. You just got to be a little careful in doing it.
Okay. Debbie on Facebook has a question about her backyard. How do you do a backyard escape on a budget?
The biggest thing that I tell people when you're starting out a project like that is plan it from start to finish and then start knocking off kind of the chunks of it as you go. Because the last thing you want to do is get it all finished up and designed out and then go, oh man, I didn't even put in electrical for the lights, or I want to have music out here. And now you're digging stuff up or having to change things around. So it's all about the first plan you start with. But a lot of the work you can do yourself. If you think about these big projects like this, half to 3/4 of it can be labor. And so if you were going to do some, $40,000 backyard retreat, you could probably knock it out 15 to 20 if you do it yourself.
And are there specific recommendations for areas of a backyard that you would tackle first to, make it more of an oasis for someone's home?
Yeah, the first things that I would do is, first off, make sure that you don't have to bring any heavy equipment or any access problems you have with that. Then I would start with putting the fence up and making sure the fence is dialed in, and then start working in from that. If you've got big dirt moving kind of things, we're going to put in a fountain or a pool or do something like that, or a hot tub, get that in first. So that way you can finish up the grass and the other stuff later. But by tacking off, the fence, you kind of define your border of what you're starting with, and then you can kind of work in from that. But like I said, if you got to bring an excavator in to dig a hole, you don't want to put a fence up and then have to tear it right back down again to do it.
I know these things seem obvious, but I know it's like these are the liability kind of things that get mentioned when it comes to products that you buy, because you have to say them. I know that you know people who have done this. This has actually happened to them, right?
Oh, it happens all the time. People will sit there and I can't tell you how many times in kitchens, for instance, that people will go in and go, "Oh, I bought this brand new house to me. It's 20 years old. They put brand new quartz countertops in the kitchen before we bought it, and now I want to replace the cabinets." And it breaks my heart to tell them that we're probably going to have to pay by the pound to haul off that brand new quartz countertop they put in when you replace the cabinets.
Simple, the order of things makes sense.
It's all about the order.
Okay, so we have some other questions for you. This one comes from an Expert Show insider who wants to know whether a bathroom is a reasonable project to take on as a novice.
Boy, it's depending on what you're doing. If you're just going to kind of do what I call a fluff and buff and clean it up, that's really an easy one. Now, if you're going to be, when you dive into a bathroom project, there's plumbing and electrical. Those are things you might have to bring in if you're moving things around. Because when you go in and tile in a shower, for instance, and you've watched all the YouTube videos and you're comfortable doing it, that plumbing needs to be right, because if you have to get in there to change it, you might have to actually take that tile back off again and do it over. So what I would recommend for something like that, if you're going to do it as a DIY project and you're really ripping it down to the studs and doing it, I would have your electrician and plumber come in and take care of that. And then that way you can do the rest of it knowing that the work done behind that was right, and you're not going to have problems later from DIY mistakes.
That's good advice. Okay. You've been in this business for so long. I'm just personally curious the mistakes that you see people making. I think we've discussed some of them, but what are the common mistakes that people make when it comes to either maintaining or improving their home? And what are some basic things that we can do relatively cheaply to extend the life of our homes?
Sure. I think the biggest mistake that I see, which is the number one out there, is people that are watching HGTV, DIY Network, great shows. I have friends on those shows, but they take those projects and try to make those budgets be their own. You're not going to get a $10,000 complete bathroom remodel because you saw it last weekend on one of the flop shows. Those prices are not real. So when you take those things and try to transmit those into your own home, you're going to be shocked when you actually look at the sales figures of what it costs to do a remodel versus what those shows are.
That is good advice. That's good advice. So I know that it can be very tempting because the sledgehammer part of those shows looks so fun, but the rest of it is a lot of work. Are there other things as far as your home or your yard that you would recommend that people do? I know you had the helpful tip about just getting your roof inspected. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, there are maintenance agreements. There's a ton of things we can talk about with this, but the first is getting maintenance agreements on some of those important things. I would have a maintenance agreement on my roof. I would have one for my heating air conditioning system, because those are both things that if they're done correctly and they're maintained and they're monitored, you're going to catch problems before they actually happen. And those are two big ones that if it goes badly, it's a big chunk of money to replace it. If you want to, you could have an electrician come out every few years and look at stuff. But with that, if you've got a newer home, it's not that big a deal. But really, one of the biggest things that I tell people, especially here in the Northwest, that I would see, or even the West Coast really, is take care of water issues no matter what they are. It could be the caulking around the bathtub or the dripping water into the sink. That little problem, I promise you, is going to get to be a big one. And with mold and things like that, the problem is we're making our homes more tight, more energy efficient. And what happens is it's more susceptible to mold growth. So any little bit of water getting behind anything is going to cause a huge problem for you down the road. So that little drip is going to get to be a big one. It's going to get to be mold. And now you're doing a remodel. So jump on top of that first.
So is it the same timeline as far as, like you mentioned, having your heating or cooling system checked? Is it the same timeline? Is that a once or twice a year thing as well, or is that more stretched out?
Depending on where you live in the country, I mean, I would look at it and say, okay, if if you've got a heating season and a cooling season, then I would say, okay, right, a couple months before heating season, I'd have them come out and do a maintenance check on that. And a month or two before you're turning on that AC, I'd have the same thing done. Now, if you were in Hawaii where the heat rarely gets turned on, then it'd be one of those things that I'd look at and say, okay, it's probably more of a cooling thing once a year, you'll be fine.
Okay. I had another question for you. This one is from Palisade Homes on Instagram. This is more of a comment, but maybe you want to chime in. Who says, do you know how often people freak out when their sink disposal stops working only to find out that there's a reset button under the sink? Yours truly, I've done this.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. I love garbage disposals, but they are what keep plumbers in business because either people don't know how to hit the reset button or they put things down there that should never go down a garbage disposal. Or they just shove too many things down there at once. So they're good at keeping plumbers' kids in college.
Yes, absolutely. This is kind of funny. John on Facebook wanted you to show us how easy it is to paint. Is it, in fact, easy?
Painting is pretty easy, but like any skill, you've got to practice it. I don't care if you're going to be painting a room for the first time or going out and playing in the Super Bowl. Everything that you do as a skill takes some practice. So the first time you paint, it's going to look like it was the first time you painted. But maybe the 10th time you painted a room, you're going to have it pretty well dialed in. So like any skill with home improvement, you better practice it a little bit before. Otherwise, it's going to look like it's your first time.
Are there things that you would recommend for folks to do seasonally? Like right now, we're in January, almost February. What are the things that we should be doing right now to get ready for spring?
I always recommend walking around your home and taking a look in your crawl space or basement and just keep an eye on things. If you start to notice things happening, like if you get a big rainstorm come through and you see water in a crawl space or you see mice down there and you're checking it once or twice a year, you didn't know if it just happened or if it happened yesterday. So by keeping a little bit of maintenance and staying on top of that, combined with good watching, I mean, just literally walk around the house. If it's a downpour, grab an umbrella, walk outside, take a look, make sure the gutters are working correctly. Are they leaking? Do you have a big pool of water upside the house that's going to cause a problem down the road? And then again, if you've got a crawl space under your house, pop that cover, stick your head down there once a month, and just take a peek with a flashlight. If you smell mice or rats, time to tackle it yourself or get an exterminator. But those are things that you should really be paying attention to because that little problem can get, again, to be a big one.
Do you have the same type of advice for the summer time? Because obviously moisture wouldn't be a problem for most of us in the summertime. What are the issues you want to be looking for during the summer months?
Same type of thing. If you walk around your house, once a month, you're going to see if you've got maybe caulking that's coming loose, or maybe you got a wasp nest that's going to get out of control, or things like that, or you got a bird's nest that's coming in there that you got to watch that they're going to get into an attic, or squirrels running around putting a nest through a broken screen. These are all things that just that once a month, take 5 minutes and walk around your house. It's going to really give you some good maintenance prevention on the outside because you can fix it quick versus have a huge problem.
Okay. I have one last question for you, unless you wanted to chime in with just, advice on something that I didn't ask you about. What are some things right now that are trending in terms of home improvement or kitchen design? Like, what are things that we can go to a hardware store right now and look at differently and bring home and maybe add to our home to make it better or more in line with the times?
Connected homes are huge. People are coming in now with, I've got the Ring doorbell, which you can have cameras on and you can answer your door. It actually helped me with a wine shipment. I had FedEx show up and I had run to the store real quick and I had to sign for a package coming in. So I could, on my Ring doorbell, say, hey, I'll be back home in 15 minutes. And they pop back by around and I got it that same day. So it's great for security. It's some of that stuff. I can control my sprinkler timers. It saves me a ton of money on water right now because I have a Bluetooth sprinkler timer system for running my yard sprinklers. So that actually stays in contact with the National Weather Service And so it'll actually not run your sprinklers on a day that it's expecting it to rain.
Wow.
And so, or a windy one, it'll go, oh, it's too windy. The wind's too high. I'm going to run your sprinklers when it's not windy, so it's not over in your neighbor's yard. So there are things like that, and appliances these days too, right, with that connected home. You can be at the grocery store and go, oh, that gallon of milk, do I have stuff in there? Do I have a gallon of milk in the fridge, or how full is it? You can turn the camera on your fridge and go, oh, yeah, I better get milk. It's almost done.
That sounds so intriguing and tempting. I don't know. I haven't gotten to quite that level of technology yet, but it's interesting to know that that's out there. I didn't even know you could connect your sprinklers via Bluetooth. That's crazy.
What's kind of fun, though, is I can turn them on when Julie's out in the yard. I can sit there and turn it on, and when everybody is out running around the yard and get their attention real quick.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun.
And cackle and laugh in the background.
Exactly, as I'm laughing sitting on the deck. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
All right, anything that I wasn't smart enough to ask you that you wanted to throw out there and just leave people with today?
Here's the one thing the best advice I can give if you're hiring people out there, and I see this all the time, and people actually try to call into my show sometimes on Around the House and argue this, but make sure that whoever's working on your home is licensed, bonded, and insured. And that is a big deal, because if you've got a roofing person up there doing maintenance on your house and they fall off and get hurt, that's your medical bill that you're going to be paying them, because they're your employee. So pay attention to who you hire out there. And if you're going to be doing a big remodel, make sure you do that research first, but make sure that you do the research the day you're signing the contract. Sign on to your state's website and look up their license to make sure it's good that same day. That way you're covered, because sometimes if they didn't pay their insurance, within 24 hours, most states cut off that license and they'll put it as suspended for non-payment of insurance. You want to make sure the day you sign that contract that actual agreement is good with insurance on it. That way you're covered for the rest of the time that they're working on your home.
So you said licensed, bonded, and insured. Those are three different things, but do they all go under the same umbrella? Like, they can't have their state license to operate if they aren't bonded and insured?
Yeah, so for instance, in the state of Oregon, where you're at there, the biggest thing with that is if they have to be state licensed, a contractor does, they have to have a bond that makes sure that they're covered for that, and they have to have insurance. If the bond and the insurance or the license is outdated, all of those come down usually at the same time. So that's one of those things that you got to make sure. But if you see that they're in good standing on the website, then you know you're covered.
Okay. No, that's a good point. Are there other things to check when it comes to contractors? Because I can't tell you how many times I've had people, just friends and neighbors and family complain that they've had all these nightmare experiences with contractors who were licensed, bonded, and insured.
There's some good referral sites out there. There's one, and again, I'm not endorsed by any of these, so I don't have a dog in the fight. But the thing is if, like, for instance, Angie's List, that is one of the most trustworthy sites that I've run into, because there are a lot of other sites that you can get on and find a contractor. The problem is that some of them, and I've seen this happen, if somebody gets a bad review, the contractor can pay extra to have that review hidden. But Angie's List, for instance, you're rated whether you like it or not, and whether you had a dispute. So you're going to see with most contractors, you might see a less than perfect review. It's not about maybe that less than perfect review. It's how they respond to it and how they handle it. Because remodeling is just a can of worms sometimes. They'll jump into a project, maybe not know what happened. Maybe somebody 50 years ago in the house made some really bad mistakes. They get the wall opened up and they find it. It's not about those problems, but it's about how they dealt with it and how they got the project finished up. So I would look and see, it's as important to see that they had a good review as how they handled even the bad ones.
And are there other red flags that you would recommend looking for when you are hiring somebody? I mean, again, along the lines of nightmares that I've heard, contractors who are given, for example, the full payment up front and they never come back. Like they literally don't come back.
Yeah, I mean, if you pay upfront 100% down for a big project, that's a big red flag. Now, they might ask for 30, 40, 50% write down, That is legal in a lot of states. Some states it's actually not. A lot of times you're paying for products. So that's one of the things that you need to kind of work with that contractor on. But again, that money thing is a big, big issue. If they ask for the whole thing up front, that's a huge problem. They could be taken off with it. Now, they are going to have to go out and buy materials, so you have to balance that. And that actually is one of the other red flags that I see that I don't like with contractors personally. If the contractor is telling you to go out and buy on a big project all the products yourself, guess what? Those products that you go out and buy are probably not going to be covered under his warranty. So if you have them put in, a faucet, for instance, and that thing gets installed and it's defective, it's your job to go out and hire somebody to go back and fix it and put a new one in. Where if his plumber installed it or her plumber installed it, then that plumber covers that warranty and they have to come out and do it. So I would buy as many things through the contractor as possible, so it's covered under that contractor's warranty.
Okay. See, something I wouldn't even think about. And let's talk about the warranties then. What is a good standard warranty to have with a contractor?
A lot of that's covered by state laws, so it's depending on where you live, but a year or two is pretty common out there. And again, read through it, make sure that you see, that those things are covered in that. Now, one of the things that I want to make sure as well out there under all these warranties and contracts and stuff that we're talking about, you got to be careful these days with lead paint and asbestos. Those are things that are commonly found in homes. Asbestos can actually be found in building materials today. So these are things that you need to be careful with. If you live in Portland and you go rip out some drywall and throw it in the back of your pickup from a 1980s or 1990s home or even an early 2000s home, they're going to send you back to your home. They're not going to take it to the transfer station. You have to have that asbestos tested before it even goes down there, and that's for 2019.
Okay. There's still products today with asbestos in it?
Yeah, they call it organic compounds. So you'll see it in roofing materials. You'll see it out there. Roofing materials, it's out there. It's not illegal to use in building materials today, even though it's deadly if you get it inside your lungs.
How is that even possible? And how is it labeled organic compounds? That's kind of a misnomer.
Well, because it's a mineral. It's just a mineral. Asbestos is a mineral. And if you go back and look at like 1950s and 60s magazines like Women's Day and all those different Better Housekeeping magazines, you'll see Armstrong flooring with more asbestos for better durability.
Oh,
because it was
gosh.
a great product. It just killed you when you cut it.
That's all. No biggie. No biggie.
That's all.
Eric G., thank you so much. You have just been incredible. So I've learned so much in this episode with you. I really appreciate your time, and I invite everybody to check out his radio show and podcast, Around the House with Eric G., and you're on to bigger and better things as well. I wish you the best in your career.
Thanks, Anna. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
All right, Eric, thanks so much. And thank you for joining us for this episode of That Expert Show. Man, I learned so much. Okay, I'm going to do a better job of compiling show notes and tip sheets when it comes to all the information that we covered, because we go over a lot in these episodes, and I want you to be able to look at that information, because I don't know about you, I'm pretty visual. I need to be able to look at something and even print it out and review it to really have all of that information sink in. You can find that information through our social media accounts. I'll tweet out that information from That Expert Show, put it on Instagram as well as my Facebook page. And I want to remind you as well that you can always watch our shows after the fact. We post them on YouTube, the YouTube channel That Expert Show, and we put them back out to you as podcasts wherever you listen to them, whether you have an Apple device or an Android device. Stitcher, TuneIn, all those different platforms, you can find That Expert Show. So that is it for this episode. I would love your feedback. Tell me what we're doing right. Tell me what can be better. And we'll see you on the next time for That Expert Show, where you help run the show.